Hey, it's Ed. Today I have a new video for anyone who's interested in GarageBand and creating GarageBand loop projects. I've got a little demo project that I've created here just specifically for this tutorial demo. And I'm not going to cover the basics. I'm going to leave that for plenty of other people who've covered it, Pete Johns and Jade Starr and many others. You can find lots of information on that. I'm going to go specifically into some techniques and tips that I've found useful for working in GarageBand loop projects and just focus on those things. I'm going to give you a quick overview. I'm going to kind of break it down starting with the left here. So on the left side, you see there are a bunch of instruments, and I'm going to show you something here. So on the left pane, now if I pinch on these, I can squeeze and move my fingers apart together. That zooms in, and you can zoom in. If you zoom out too far, what's going to happen is the instrument descriptions disappear. You may notice that I've got things sort of grouped together here on the left. Here I've got keys on the top. I've got, this says stingers, but it's actually like more like a key sound. Here's some percussion, drums, snare, and so forth. I got percussion all the way down here, then some bass. And here I have some sort of transition effects and impacts and things like that. So I've got it kind of organized by role. So I highly recommend that if you're working in a project like this, of any size, group those things together in a way that makes sense to you. Second thing I want to talk about is along the bottom here, there's these little arrows. Now, by default, normally what you're going to see is these little triangles down at the bottom, which are actually play buttons. So if I tap on that, it's going to play that column and all the instruments in that column. Let me stop that. Now, what you can do is this little edit button on the lower left, if you tap that, you can have all sorts of options to edit items in here. The non-edit mode is intended for live playing. You can tap wherever you want, select and so forth, and stop and start things and all that good stuff. But if you want to change these settings or view settings, that's the edit button. Now you're in edit mode. So you can click on this column, for example, and it gives you a number of settings. I'm not going to go into all these. What I'm going to focus on right now is rename. So what I've done is I've gone in here and I did a rename. Now you may not notice that these actually do have names out of the box. They have numbers, but normally it's zoomed out so far that you can't see them. So like 2 and 4, those are the defaults that it comes with. But what I've done here is I've renamed these sort of to help me sort of keep track of what's where, and as the project grows, I can keep track of it. So that comes in handy. Let's talk a little bit about the cells themselves and what you can do with these cells. I'll just use my techniques to talk about some of the options that I find of interest with the cells. So, for example, here, what I've got, put in edit mode. If I go here and I look at this cell right here, you notice a bunch of settings here, right? And I want you to focus on down here semitones or semitones. This is currently, there's no semitone adjustment, right, on this one. However, if I click on this one, you'll notice that this one is +4 semitones. So why is that, right? Well, I'll tell you why. The reason is I've got two things here. These are basically the same instrument. However, I wanted to create a fuller sound. So what I decided to do is, this is a loop, by the way. These are all loops with the exception of this instrument here. So everything I'm talking about is loops, just to be clear. So what I did is I had this initially, and it sounded a little thin, and I thought, well, how can I, add to that? And I thought, okay, I'll add in a second one, but wait, how about if I offset it by 4 semitones? And then it's going to give me a fuller sound. So let me show you what it sounds like. So here by itself, little simple pattern, but let me kick this in now. Now that's a little fuller, right? You got a little bit of there's a 4 semitone, which would be a major third interval in there. So that's you could do 3 of these if you wanted to create a chord and go even further, go crazy like Jacob Collier and create, 20 of them or something crazy like that, right? But that's the idea. So that's number one. I wanted to point out, you can use this all over the place. You can do this with MIDI loops. You can do this audio loops. Second thing I want to show you is something I did down here. What I've got here is, if I go here to edit, you'll see settings. Now this is all going to be exactly the same between the two. Everything basically is the same. However, I think I dropped the velocity a little bit. It's -9. I'll come back to that later about adjusting velocities per cell. But I made a change instead of in the cell. On this one, I made a change in the instrument. So if you look here, you notice this one has no echo or reverb. This one has an echo and reverb and a little bit of track pan on it. So again, let me show you how this sounds with and without. Sort of a slappy synth bass sound, right? Let me stop that now. Let's start them up together. So there's a little echo bouncing around in there, right? Gives it a little bigger sound, a little deeper sound, a little more going on. So that's another technique you can use, combine instruments in these cells. You can do that on tracks, of course, in a regular GarageBand project. Let's go to settings again. Now you can adjust volume in a couple different ways. You got these sliders over here on the left where you can adjust the volume of the entire track. The limitation with that is, since you're dealing with loops, you're not going to be able to adjust the individual volume of these loops from over here. It's going to adjust the level of all that entire row. So if I take this up or down, it's going to affect that entire row, which you might need to do on the whole. However, if you're interested in creating a little bit of interest in this particular sequence here, as you're going through boom, boom, boom through your columns through this progression here, maybe you want these sounds to go higher, softer, lower, right? Again, you got all those settings to choose from. We talked about one, which was the semitones, but combining them. You can also change semitones between keeping the same loop and then changing between cells. That's another thing you could do. I can change the semitones between this guy, this guy, this guy, and this guy if I wanted. I can also change the levels, depending on what else is going on. So I can go in here, I can tap on this and tap on settings. And here I've got this gain level basically, right? I've got a gain level here. It's probably the same, right? But I could change those levels. And I actually have done that in a couple cases in this project. I've changed the levels to adjust, to suit what was going on a little better. And I had to drop some of them quite a bit because it was too much loudness. So that's another thing you can do. Now, here's something sort of interesting. Now, if you want to change settings, and this is kind of, I just found this today actually. If you want to change settings on multiple loops, you can actually do that. What you need to do is tap and hold on these. I could tap and hold this one, this one, this one, all at the same time. And I can actually change the settings on both of these in parallel. So if I wanted to change the settings on these two loops, if I apply this right now, it says 3 cells up here. I've got another third cell, but I probably can't see where it's at. But anyway, you get the idea, right? You can adjust the quantized play mode, all these things on multiple cells. You can do it horizontally, or you can do it vertically, any way you like. All right, here we go. Transposition. Now it says multiple values, as you can see, which means basically it's saying to me these cells have different values. Now you can also transpose these things up or down, and I believe it's going to affect both of them. If I do it, let's find out. I haven't tried this yet, so let's live dangerously here and find out. Let's see what happens. It did. Yeah, in fact, if you have multiple cells, even if there are different values in those cells, it will still retain like one, we've got 4 semitones between those 2 cells. It transposed each one the correct amount. It didn't collapse those semitone differences between the 2 cells. It just moved both of them up by an octave, which is very convenient. There you go. There's another option for editing cells, which might come in handy. And you can select as many cells as you want. I don't know how it's going to work if you go crazy and select different cell types and stuff like that, but give it a shot. See what happens, right? What's to lose? Make a copy of a project, mess it up, try it, see what happens, experiment. If it doesn't work, revert to the copy, or you can use undo, as I did. All right, next. Let's see. I talked about offsetting the intervals. I talked about different values of the gain. Let me talk about reverse. Yeah, so there is an option here. You'll notice that certain cells, if I click this cell, it's moving left to right, and the fact that it's moving left to right means it's a single shot, and the one above it is moving right to left. That means it's running in reverse. And if I go to the properties here and I look on that, you'll notice settings. It's here you can see it's set to reverse. So basically what I did here, and I'm going to jump into another technique here, which is like more production based, right? So we've added some interest to these instruments up here by, making two of them, splitting them to like a power chord type interval there, sort of thing, with not a perfect fifth, but it's sort of that sort of thing, right? And then we've got these guitars down here doubled up with different settings on the instrument. Now down here, what I've got is I had these this sort of laid out, these top rows all sort of set up, and some of the transitions were just kind of weak. They're still not great, so keep that in mind. But I needed something to add a little bit of interest and a little bit of expectation of like, okay, something's happening here. And that's what you can see right here. I've got a little going on here and a little going on here. That sort of bridges, because this section right here, this is one section, and this is an interval, is sort of a transition, and this is a new section. So this section here on the right and this section on here on the left are completely different, similar tempos, similar sort of a pattern of percussion, but totally different vibes. So I needed something to bridge those two. So what I did down here is I added a couple things, and I want to talk about loops over here. So I wanted to add a couple things, and I'll give you a couple tips here about adding loops and the technique of adding interest and bridging those sections or transitions. So one of the things I talked about is you could for example take these three columns here, right, like this one. Here what I've done is I've actually put an octave interval in here between some of these. You can see that I've got like an octave interval between this one and this one. So I raised everything, not everything, but some of these were raised by an octave to sort of elevate it a little bit. And I've got it, down here, it says elevate, just to help me remember. And then it drops back down right here. All right, so, that's something you can do, but I still needed a little more something going on. I needed something to lead into that elevation, and that's where I came up with this little guy, right? It's a little loop. Let's see what it's called. It is called Dark Tuning Vox Riser. So let me jump into the next section here. So what I want to talk about is like adding these things like risers, boomers and stuff like that, you've got all these instruments and loops going on up here, but you need some things to help these transitions and keep things interesting besides just the variation that you've added to these loops, right? And I'm not great at this, so you can take my tips and expand on them. But let me show you basically what I was looking at here. So, for example, if you want to find risers, if you can type, you can type in the search bar here, and you can find these risers, and you can, try them all out. There's a lot of them to choose from. You'll notice some of them start very slow, so you can hardly hear it. That one you can hear. Now, that's one thing you can do. You can look for risers. You can also look for boomers. If I could spell again. Yeah, you can look for boomers. And all sorts of things like that. I'm not going to dive into all the kind of different things that are available in the Apple Loops. It's massive amounts of choices in there. But those are two examples, and you can kind of look at what's in here and see what your choices are. But those are two choices out of the many that are there. And let's see. So basically, I added some of those things in here. This is another. It's pretty slow. Now this one, it's kind of like a boom, basically. Those kind of go together. So I'll demonstrate for you. So here's the end of this section. Now I need a signal that I'm ending, right? What's happening here? Something's going to happen. And now I'm building, building, building. And here I've got something I programmed, typed in myself, a little ascending key line there. And then we go into the next section. And then establish the vibe. All right, so there you go. Okay, last thing I want to talk about is called the merge playing cells function. So what this allows you to do is, let's say you've got a project where you've got a bunch of cells already filled in with various loops and things, right? And you're doing your live performance or playing around, whatever. I'll spin up a couple here, one here, one here, one here, one here. These might mismatch, it's okay. So basically, let's say I like that combination of cells, but it's spread across multiple columns. And now I could potentially, copy those cells all together into a single column so I could trigger them together like they're playing now. Or alternate, I can go to the edit button on the lower left there, enable that, tap on a column. You can select any column you want, but remember this will overwrite. So I would suggest select an empty column. Then there's this option called merge playing cells. Now if you tap that, it will take any cells that are currently playing and it will place them all in a single column. So it is kind of a merge, but basically it's just copy everything that's playing, put it in a single column. That's basically what it is. So that was the last thing I wanted to cover today. Thank you very much for watching the videos, and I appreciate your time. And next up will be a demo of this entire song with the FX, which I didn't talk about. There's this FX function here, and that can be recorded too, by the way. So when you record your performance, the FX gets embedded into your performance and with the tracks. There's an FX track. So I didn't talk about it because it's really, you got to really kind of demonstrate it. So hopefully, if you want, go ahead and continue watching. It'll play the entire performance of this project with the FX throughout. It's a couple minutes long, but you can get the feel of it from just a few bars. So thanks for watching. Take care.